In this video, we're going to make it so that we can only call the damage method on our enemy one time. Right now, when we swing our sword, it's going to basically either call it once, twice, or 3 times within the same swing. We want to prevent that. We want to say call the damage function 1 time per swing if there is some form of collision. So to do this, let's open up our attack script. And basically what we need to do is we need to make it so that this is only called once. And that's the challenge here. That's the problem. How do we make it so that this is called once? Right now in our animation, our box is every swing we have the opportunity. There's 16 frames in our animation. That's 16 opportunities to call this method. So imagine our enemy here is being hit 3 times in one animation. Well, it's being called 3 individual times then. Every time that box hits the enemy, it's going to get called and run this code, which is why our damage function is getting called. So what we need to do here is we need to delay this hit.damage method from being executed more than once per swing. So how do we do that? Well, that's going to come into creating a system that's going to block this from getting called. We don't really care if this gets called. We care if this specific line of code on line 15 here gets called. If this hit.damage gets called, then we're screwed. We need to make it so that this hit.damage only gets called 1 swing at a time. So to do this, we basically want to isolate the functionality here. So to do that, you need a variable to determine if the damage function can be called. Okay, so think of like a switch. Anytime you think of a switch, think of like a bool system. So like a can damage, for example, and it's set to true by default. And then once you damage, you'll need to create brackets in here. We're going to call hit damage, but then we need to make sure that we can't call this ever again. You can think of it as sort of like a cooldown system. We want to make sure that we can't call this again. So what can we do? We could take the variable we created, and basically we can say, that function to be called. Basically, you need to take whatever the variable you create to determine if the damage function be called and set that variable to false. And here, you need to then check if that variable is true. So here, we're going to say like, if can attack, then what do we want to do? Call this hit damage method, set that variable to false, and then now you have isolated that functionality. It's no longer available to be called. What you need to do then is create some sort of reset method. Basically, after 0.5 seconds, go ahead and set that variable back to true so we can run this logic again. To do that, I recommend using like a coroutine. Coroutine to reset variable after like 0.5 seconds. So that's the logic to create this blocker. There are multiple ways you can go around this as well. This is the simplest method that I've found, but there's other things you can look into, such as state machine behaviors to get the on enter and on exit state of this animation. There are also things you can do, such as using animation events in Unity. So go ahead, do your research, and I'll see you guys in the challenge review.